narcotics. And that got me pulled from a live interview with Ted Koppel. The ranking member of LAPD in the room that day was Deputy Chief Mark Croker. Yeah, I'm having fun already. Now I want to talk about CIA dealing drugs briefly because I have to lay a foundation. You have to understand the economic and the political context in which this war is taking place and in which it is set. And there's two things that if you don't understand, you will never understand September the 11th. One is drugs, the other is oil. Or one is oil, the other is drugs, okay? We want to talk about evidence. We want to talk about proof, okay? This is a memorandum that was written February 11th, 1982 to the Honorable William J. Casey. Everybody remember Bill Casey from Iran-Contra? CIA Director, signed by Attorney General William French Smith. This was at the beginning of the Contra War, very early in the Reagan administration. And something had happened before this. There had been a series of negotiations. Now, in the CIA, the highest rung on the food chain is called an officer. If you are a case officer at CIA, you are someone who cannot be disavowed or denied. You are a man of the cloth. You are a man blessed with immunity. The agency will protect you. But underneath that on the food chain, they have career agents, contract agents, foreign agents, informants. They have proprietary companies, employees of the there's a whole category of people. Well, in 1982, because the CIA knew there was going to be a massive explosion in cocaine trafficking that they were going to control, U.S. Cocaine consumption went from roughly 80 metric tons in 1979 to 600 metric tons by 1987. Think about that for a minute. That's a lot of coke. All right? They knew that was coming. All right? So one of the things they did legally, because the agency and the government, they always find paper ways to try to cover their trail, and they think nobody will catch them. One of my favorite lines of all time, and for the first 100 of you who got here, you got a free copy of my last issue of From the Wilderness, is from Alan Dulles, who, when the Warren Commission report was released, however many volumes there were, and you read those volumes and you know that Lee Harvey Oswald didn't kill John Kennedy. And Alan Dulles said, the American people don't read. You don't read. This memorandum says, first of all, they took all the people who were not case officers and they decided to call them non-employees of the Central Intelligence Agency. There's a federal law stating that if a federal employee breaks a federal law, you have to report him. They were caught on the horns of a dilemma. So first they said, well, all these people are not employees, even though they get CIA paychecks. And then they said, in light of these provisions and in view of the fine cooperation the Drug Enforcement Administration has received from CIA, no formal requirement regarding the reporting of narcotics violations has been included in these procedures. That's black and white evidence of a conspiracy. The Attorney General of the United States just told the CIA director he no longer had to report it when anybody other than a case officer was dealing drugs. Let's look at something else about how cynical these people are. Now, I've been studying CIA and the drug trade for about 23 years, and this is one of my favorite documents of all time. Some 28 C-130 Hercules were smuggled by the CIA and the Pentagon through the U.S. Forest Service into private hands, supposedly for the purpose of fighting forest fires. The problem is that some of them turned up in Peru, in Mexico, in Panama, in Angola, in Iran, and Iraq, running covert missions for the CIA. One of these C-130s was caught in Mexico City. Aeropostal de Mexico had it, with $1 billion worth of cocaine on board. The Forest Service, having let these airplanes out, found itself in a kind of embarrassing position. So they had their lawyers work on it, and notice the last sentence. DOD is the Department of Defense. Apparently, DOD thinks that by having the Forest Service as the intermediary, if any future aircraft are used in drug smuggling, the Forest Service and not DOD will suffer the adverse publicity. They don't care about stopping it. They care about who's going to take the blame. It is possible to nail these people, but you have to know how to approach. The main reason why the CIA deals drugs is for one reason and one reason only. It's not to fund covert operations. The main reason is not to weed out the gene pool, although I will tell you, and I have proven that blacks have been deliberately targeted, but the CIA brings in more drugs than all the African Americans could use in this country. The main reason the CIA deals drugs is to support the U.S. economy. Let's take a look for a second. I don't know if you can read this in the back, but I'll call the names out. We're going to see something that's very unusual here. The National Security Act of 1947 created the CIA. It was written by a man named Clark Clifford, who was a longtime aide to Harry Truman. Okay? Clark Clifford's profession was he was a Wall Street banker and lawyer. Clark Clifford is also the man who brought a bank called BCCI into the United States in the 1980s, a drug money laundering bank that was exposed for laundering drug money. The design for the CIA, in other words, the people who told Clifford how to write the act, were two brothers, John Foster and Allen Dulles, the Dulles brothers, Duller, and Dulles. John Foster Dulles was Secretary of State to President Dwight Eisenhower. Allen Dulles was the DCI, not from 81 to 87, he was the DCI from, I think, roughly 1953 until about 61 in the Bay of Pigs when John F. Kennedy fired him. You know what their profession was? Wall Street lawyers at the law firm of Sullivan and Cromwell, which is today the most powerful law firm on Wall Street. Bill Casey, the man we just saw the memo addressed to. We know he was Ronald Reagan's DCI. What did Bill Casey do for Richard Nixon? He was chairman of the Securities and Exchange Commission. Stanley Sporkin, one of my favorite turkeys, was CIA General Counsel during the 80s. He used to email back and forth with Oliver North. Dear Stanley to Ollie, Stanley to Ollie. It was very funny. Okay? Do you know what he did before he became... No, he was the General Counsel to the SEC. Securities and Exchange Commission, charged with monitoring all securities transactions. David Daugherty, CIA General Counsel after Stanley Sporkin. You know what he does today? The Executive Vice President of the New York Stock Exchange for enforcement. Isn't that great? And then we have a gentleman by the name of A.B. Buzzy Krongard, and we're going to hear a lot about Buzzy Krongard tonight. Buzzy Krongard is currently the CIA Executive Director. The top three positions are DCI, Director of Central Intelligence, DDI, Deputy Director of Intelligence, and Executive Director. Buzzy Krongard was, until 1998, the head of an investment bank called A.B. Brown. A.B. Brown is involved in insider trading connected to September the 11th. He's a Wall Street banker. As a matter of fact, 6 out of 7 of the first deputy directors of intelligence came to CIA from Wall Street. The mission of the CIA is to control money and cash flow for the benefit not of you and me, but for the benefit of the banks and the stock brokerage houses and all